What is going on, my planting people? My name is Lithius and welcome to Roots Ready. So I was going through my plants today and I was thinking to myself, you know what, some of these plants give me little to no stress at all when it comes to their care. So it can be the coldest winter nights or the hottest summer days and these plants just keep on growing like it's nobody's business. And then there are other plants that are really on the opposite end of that scale. They are sometimes a nightmare to look after, really difficult, or they require a lot of care and attention to keep them happy and thriving. So I thought, you know what, let me grab my camera and I'm going to show you a couple of plants that I find really easy to look after and some that I really struggle with. And I've got 10 on this list that I want to show you today. So come along for the ride. Now the first plant I'm going to show you is actually a family of plants, and it's not one that I've spoken about much on this channel. And that is my collection of DRACAENA. Look at this one. I think this is called the DRACAENA compacta, if I'm not mistaken. It's a beautiful plant. It's also got a little pepper tree growing alongside it, along the back. Believe it or not, this pepper tree has a bit of a tangent. The seeds, I think I planted them in there maybe about 2 or 3 years ago. It was actually my mum, she came over, she chucked them in, and it took that long for it to start to grow. So that was about 2 years just sitting on top of the soil until it actually took hold. But anyway, let's get back to the DRACAENA. Hands down, probably the easiest plant to look after. When it comes to lighting, they're not too fussy. They can survive in lower light conditions. They won't thrive, but they can sort of just stay put. This one is on a south facing window and it gets lots and lots of light, and even when it's blasted with light it just keeps on growing like it's nobody's business. And I've actually got 2 more over here right behind me. So this one over here, this is actually probably one of the oldest plants in my collection. I remember I picked this up from IKEA actually, and it's one of the larger ones, so you can see it all the way over here. It's an absolutely gorgeous plant. It's just been growing really steadily. It's not a super fast grower, but it is super easy to grow. It's been in this pot for maybe about 3 or 4 years now. It's been in here for a very long time. I'm sure it can do for a bit of repotting, but despite that, ignore the empty pots in here. And there's actually some other, I think, Christmas cactus growing in here as well, so ignore that. But that just goes to show you that with just minimal care, this plant will just keep on kicking. And just like this one over here, which has got a bit of variegation in the leaves, I'm not sure exactly the name of this one. This has been doing absolutely phenomenal. Just look at that. It's in a decent sized pot. Again, it's been in this pot for many years, and it just kept on growing really well. I'm really proud of these plants. And if you're starting your plant journey and you're very early on and you don't yet want to jump straight into the rarer plants and the ones that require more sort of specific care, definitely start it off with a DRACAENA. These are also known as the dragon trees, and it's just absolutely gorgeous and really easy to look after. You won't go wrong with these plants. This right here, I don't need to tell you how difficult it is to care for. I'm sure you don't even know what plant this is. I don't really talk about it much because I've never had a lot of success growing it. But this is my ANTHURIUM FURCATUM, and it's been really tough to care for this plant. This is what this plant always does to me. It will grow fine. It will grow a new leaf just like this, and it will look really good, and you'll have your hopes really high for it. And any other leaf that comes along, it will just drop it. It will start to brown like this, and it will just completely die back, and that will be it. It'll be gone. And I just don't know why it's so tough to care for this plant. Usually I have no issues growing anthuriums, but with this one in particular, it is so tough. I'm growing this one in pon. That's how I typically grow a lot of my anthuriums. All of my anthuriums, apart from the queen anthurium, I have growing in pon, and there's been no issues apart from this one. So that could be the reason. It continues to grow new leaves. As I say, here's a new one that will soon emerge, and I'm sure as soon as it starts to grow, this one here, this healthy looking one, will be well and truly on its way out. And I'm not sure why that is. As my anthuriums go, I always thought the queen anthurium was the toughest to care for, but no, it definitely has to be this ANTHURIUM FURCATUM. I do want to get the care for this down, because when they grow in, they have these amazing, phenomenal lobes. Have a look at Hakuna LaPlanta, his channel. He has a beautiful specimen, and I definitely want to get one for myself, but I think I just need to get the care down for this one, and I will do it. I will do it. I'm just not sure when and how that's going to happen, but it will happen. Another really easy plant to look after lives right next to my dragon tree. We've just spoken about this one, but this is the Monstera Peru. An absolutely eye-catching plant. Just look at the leaves on these things when they're growing really well, and you know, it's dust free, unlike these ones. They are absolutely stunning to look after. Look at that dark green, look at the belate leaves. It's just, oh, it's beautiful. And I've got it right here in a corner, it just sort of tucked away. But guys, this plant is super chilled and really easy to care for. This plant is as easy as the traditional Monstera deliciosa, really easy to look after, but obviously this one is different. It's a trailing plant, it's a climbing plant, and it loves it. It grows really well, really steady as well. I really don't have much to say about this plant other than it's really easy. I fertilize this plant whenever I remember to. If you give it a really good fertilizer schedule, I'm sure you get a lot of beautiful growth out of this thing. But this thing is almost bulletproof. It just weathers the, you know, really dry soils. I try not to overwater this plant. Actually, I'm really careful with how I water it, but even though I've made sure that the soil is really well draining, and when I do water it, I make sure that the water comes out in this saucer over here, and then I'll throw it out, and that's it. And I probably do that maybe once every week, once every 2 weeks, depending on when the plant needs it. But it's not one that's super thirsty or super difficult to look after, so it had to make it onto this list of easy plants to look after. I don't know if you'll be able to tell what plant this is, but this is my Philodendron PLOWMANII, and this thing has been, I don't know, lately has been so tough to look after. The main reason why this plant has been so hard to look after is because of how susceptible it is to spider mites, and equally the Pastazanum has also come down and suffered. You can see it in this leaf as well, but it's doing a lot better than the PLOWMANII for whatever reason. Even when it wasn't being attacked by spider mites, this plant would just start to brown on the edges. It'd be really tough to sort of care for it. So I'm not sure why it's so hard to look after. You can see that I'm growing it in leca, but that hasn't been a problem because I grow a lot of other plants in leca and that hasn't been an issue. But for whatever reason, this plant is really struggling. It's really struggling. So I'm gonna have to try something different, something new, to hopefully save this plant, because I don't want to lose it. I think it's such a gorgeous plant. This is the leaf that we're expecting to come in any day now, and this is the most recent leaf. Like, it's so tiny, so small. The good thing is it looks a lot healthier than the leaf that came before. Have a look at that. It's yellowing really badly. I'm not sure what's going on there, and the leaves prior are equally looking a bit worse for wear. So I'm hoping that we can do something to save this plant and keep it happy. That, as well as the Pastazanum as well. We want to make sure that we give these plants a really good opportunity to survive and thrive, but they have both been very difficult to look after. But for the purpose of this list, the PLOWMANII had to make it on here, and yeah, we'll figure out a way to save it, and I'll keep you guys posted on how we do that. But for now, it's gonna have to firmly remain on one of the harder plants to care for list. This is my String of Hearts, an absolutely beautiful plant, and one I would say is really easy to care for as well. For me, this plant, the reason why it's so easy is that it kind of took me by surprise, right? So when I first got this plant, I thought it's got these smaller leaves, it will probably require a bit more care and attention, but it doesn't. It truly doesn't. This plant is almost like a succulent. If you ever go through and unpot this plant, or you look through the stems, you will discover that it's got these little potato-like structures, these little balls. I'll try to bring one in. I can see one just here. So there, right there, you can see it. This is exactly what I'm talking about. These little balls, it develops along the stem, and it's quite thick, it's quite hardy. As I said, it's almost like a potato. What that means is this plant has an amazing ability to hold on to water. So you don't need to overwater this plant. You don't need to think about it too much. For me, I water this plant maybe once every 2 weeks, even longer during the winter months. It's very light as I'm holding it now, which means that it probably needs a little bit of water. I'll be careful how I do that because, as I said, it's very much like a succulent, so you want to be careful with that as well. But apart from that, once you get the scheduling right, the watering right, and make sure that you're not overwatering this thing, it's going to be a piece of cake to care for. Another thing I really like about this plant is the fact that you can really customize it. At the moment, I'm trying to grow it into like a little ball, a little floating ball thing, like a chandelier of string of hearts. You can see I'm kind of working on it. It's still a little bit sparse. I'm waiting for some more stems and vines to grow through so I can wrap it around this pot. But when it's done, it's going to look amazing. And the fact that it's also easy to care for, an even bigger bonus. Now, when talking about plants that are difficult to care for, you can't do it without mentioning the Monstera Thai constellation. This plant, ladies and gentlemen, is tough. I think I've gotten over the worst of it, and I've told you the story about this plant and its journey with me, and we've come a long way. But despite that, I am really cautious about how I care for this plant. It is really delicate. It does not like to be overwatered because it's super susceptible to root rot. So because of that, you want to be really careful about how you care for this plant. You want to make sure the soil is appropriate, very well draining. You want to make sure that it has the right amount of warmth, light, humidity as well, just to sort of promote that growth. Once this plant gets to a really mature level, those risks and that difficulty level does start to come down, but it never disappears completely. So definitely one for this list in terms of a hard plant to care for, the Monstera Thai constellation. This is my Begonia maculata. Not a plant that I speak about much on this channel, but it is just lovely. Look at the dots, and there's another Begonia over here, and it's equally as lovely to look at. But the Begonia maculata, I've had it for longer. It's a much bigger plant, and it's been super easy to care for. It has been an absolute joy to grow. The only thing I would say about this plant is you need to make sure that it gets enough water. In my experience, it doesn't like to dry out too much and for too long, I would say. So it does like that wet and dry cycle. However, you need to be careful that you don't let it go into that dry cycle for too long. And that's how I've been caring for this plant, and it's been it just keeps going. It's been really lovely, and I guess as long as you give it enough light as well, this plant will absolutely love you for it. Just look at that. Even back here, it's growing so well. Let me move some of these leaves out of the way for you so you can see. Even back here, we've got some lovely growth. It blooms constantly, which is a good sign, but it also means that I've got to do a lot of cleaning up as well, a lot of sweeping. Look at that, a lot of sweeping around this plant. But apart from that, definitely is one to have in your collection if you're looking for that easy, stress-free plant care routine. It's almost like deja vu with this plant, right? So this is my CYRTOSPERMA JOHNSTONII, a plant that I actually lost last year, and I've managed to get my hands on another one. This one, it seems to be going that same direction. It's starting to really struggle. It's got some browning leaves on the back here, some drooping leaves as well, which is not a good sign. Last time this happened, the plant just completely declined. And yeah, maybe I just haven't got the care for this plant down. If anyone knows what this plant needs to be really happy and to really thrive, do let me know. But it's always been one that I've struggled to grow. In the summer, absolutely fine, easy to care for. It grows like nobody's business, but during the winter, really struggle to grow this thing. So would appreciate any help and advice to the YouTube world out there. If you have anything to say, any useful tips, do let me know, keep me posted. But yeah, this plant, I will get it down. I like this plant so much. I enjoy growing it so much. I think it's such a unique plant, really interesting to grow, that I will continue to try to grow and continue to try to make it happy. Just like I've done with the Queen Anthurium. I failed twice, and on the third time it's been really well. This is my second time going, maybe third time lucky, who knows, but I hope I don't get that far and I can keep this one growing to maturity. So the CYRTOSPERMA JOHNSTONII, beautiful plant but tough to care for. If I'm able to sort of navigate my way through the jungle of plants, you will see this one right here. This, my friends, is the Philodendron jungle boogie. It's a plant that I got when it was absolutely tiny, just a small little thing, and it's grown to this massive, gigantic size. I can't even get it out of there. It's in a huge pot. The leaves sort of, just look at that. So this is the top of the leaf, and this is my hand next to it. It's just massive. This plant, I would say, is actually probably too easy to look after. If you don't have the space to care for this plant, I would just suggest maybe thinking twice. It grows super quickly, really easy to look after. At the moment, I'm growing this plant in pond. I'm sure if I grew it in soil, it will grow even faster. But the reason why I'm growing it in pond is that I can control the speed and the rate of growth in this thing. It's such an easy grower that you can underwater this plant or overwater it and it's just gonna keep on growing. It is an absolute beast of a plant, and if I tell you, it's actually way too easy to care for. I just don't know what to do with it. It's gonna keep growing, it's gonna keep getting bigger. I don't know where I'm gonna store this plant, where I'm gonna keep it, but I will find a way. I do enjoy growing it, but I will say it is very fast, very resilient, especially where I've had some of my plants like this one over here. This is my Pastazanum and my PLOWMANII, which isn't looking great at the moment. These plants have come down with spider mites, and you'd think it being this close to the jungle boogie that it would also be struck down. It's resisted all of the spider mites. To be fair, nothing other than these plants. I think these plants are just so delicious to the spider mites that they don't bother anything else. But I would have thought that because it's a philodendron, it's that leathery kind of leaf similar to the others, that it would also attract the spider mites, but it didn't. So another reason why it's such an easy plant to care for. Now, I certainly wasn't expecting this HOYA LATIFOLIA to make it onto the hard list of plants to care for, because to be honest with you, for the past 2 years or so that I've been growing this plant, it's been an absolute breeze to care for. But for whatever reason, recently, it's been really struggling. Look at this leaf. Look at this one over here. Look at the back of it. Look at the front of it. I'm not sure what is going on with this plant. The stem is looking very yellow. That looks like it's going. This leaf, which is, it's not a new leaf, but it's also looking really rough shape. These leaves, if I rotate the plant around, you could, oh, look at that. Look at the state of that. Wow, I'm not sure what's going on. I've limited the watering on this plant to try to save it, and for whatever reason that hasn't helped. I think this top cutting here has some life in it still. I think this is a previous injury, so I might try to save some of it, but I don't know what's going on with this one. It's just really taken a turn for the worst, and the way it's looking, it's going to be a very hard one to save. So I'm not sure, but yeah, this latifolia, for whatever reason, has just really started to suffer, so I've had to put it on this list this time around, the HOYA latifolia.